Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Benny Paris, and I'm the president of the Harvard Law School chapter of the Federalist Society. I'm very pleased and humbled to introduce to you the speakers for this afternoon's Fireside Chat. So principally, we have Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. General Blanche has served as the number 2 at the DOJ since March of 2025, as well as the acting Librarian of Congress since May of this year, although that's perhaps disputed in litigation. Prior to that, he worked at Blanche Law, where he helped defend President Trump against Alvin Bragg's unprecedented and ultimately unsuccessful 2024 New York criminal prosecution of the then former president. Blanche attended American University for his BA and Brooklyn Law for his JD. He clerked for Judge Denny Chin, then of the SDNY, and Judge Joseph Bianco, then of the EDNY. That's the district court thereof. With him as moderator, we have Gene Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton currently serves as president of America First Legal, which he co-founded to pursue legal action for the America First agenda. Before that, he served as deputy White House counsel to President Donald John Trump, as well as counselor to the Attorney General and senior counselor to the Secretary of Homeland Security. Hamilton attended the University of Georgia for his BA and Washington and Lee for his JD. Please kindly join me in giving them a very warm welcome. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for spending time with us. As you heard, it is my distinct honor and privilege to be sitting here today with the greatest librarian in the entire country.
Acting
librarian. So there's a lot of things that I'm sure all of you have been around town. You've heard a lot of these types of fireside chats, whether it's at prior conventions, other events, and I'd like to just start out with some of the things that sometimes get skipped over, which is let's get a little bit more about Todd to learn to know a little bit more about you as a person. So, Todd, where's home? Where's home for you?
Thanks, Gene. So then thanks, everybody, for letting me spend some time with you today. So right now, home is about 7 minutes from the Department of Justice, but my wife and I moved to Palm Beach Gardens 2 years ago when I was representing President Trump. So I'm a Floridian, but for 25 years, I lived in New York, most of that time on Long Island, and then a little bit of the time in the city.
And one of the things that I think is really unique, at least as far as I understand, tell especially the law students in the audience, why don't you give a little bit more about your background, your legal education, and how you got your start in the Department of Justice?
Sure. So it's actually a great story. It's very, I think it's a great story. You can. So I was a senior in college here at American University. I had no idea what I wanted to do. When I was about to start my senior year, my then girlfriend, now wife, worked at GW Hospital, and she was a suturist, so she would stitch people up. And this guy comes in who had cut his hand opening I'm not making this up, opening a can of cat food, okay? And so he had cut his hand, and my then girlfriend was stitching him up, and they were, for some reason, talking about me. And he said he was a lawyer at the Department of Justice, and while she's stitching him up, she says, well, can my boyfriend have an internship with you? And so, I mean, I'm serious. So this dude is probably thinking like, this is crazy. What am I supposed to do right now? And his name was Juan Marrero. He was in the money laundering section in the criminal division. He went on to become an ALJ judge. So I interned at DOJ knowing almost nothing about it. I was hired there when I graduated here at Maine Justice. I worked in the narcotic and dangerous drugs section as a paralegal for 2 years. By that time, I was married to that lady who got me my first in, and she's from New York. So we had little kids, and I moved to New York. I was a paralegal at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan, and went to night law school at Brooklyn Law School. So to those law students out there that were paralegals before you went to law school, I'm with you. I was a paralegal for seven long years. But I will tell you, when I was a paralegal at the U.S. Attorney's Office is when I fell in love with the department and with justice and with putting bad guys in jail and doing the work that our prosecutors do around the country every day. And so my whole focus was trying to become an AUSA. And so I tried to get a job at the law firm that was then the feeder firm to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I was a clerk for tried to get clerkship at judges that the U.S. Attorney's Office liked and hired from. It was my singular focus to be able to be a prosecutor. And a couple years after I left, I was able to go back as a prosecutor in SDNY. And so it was a very unusual path to becoming a prosecutor. I used to make fun of most of my colleagues who were from Ivy League schools because they couldn't use a photocopier. And I used to call them Harvard, and things like that. But, there's different ways at the department, there's different ways to have success and to get in the door. And mine was certainly unusual, but I don't regret it even a little bit. I mean, I had a great time being a paralegal in college and law school, working with the department, and then being able to go back as a prosecutor.
That's great. How do you think that your experience as a prosecutor, which is that natural job that it sounds like you saw fit to pursue, how did that prepare you for what you're doing today? And do you have any memorable experiences from your time as a prosecutor?
Well, I spent 10 years in Manhattan making fun of Maine Justice and telling them what a bunch of clowns they were. And so now that I'm the clown at Maine Justice, that was certainly a nice runway for me. Look, being a prosecutor, for those in the room that have been in the past or that want to be, is the greatest job in the world, I think. As far as what we do, there's nothing better than, no matter the case, whether it's a very simple felon in possession of a weapon or whether it's a complicated RICO murder 6-week trial, it's amazing and great work. And so that foundation is with me every day as Deputy Attorney General. I don't get to do anything like that these days, in a courtroom. Although I did interview a lady down in Florida a few months ago, but that was kind of different. Look, you need credibility in in everything that we do, and so I want prosecutors that work in the department and leadership in the department and even the defense bar and the judges that we are in front of to believe in what we're doing. And so I think hopefully the work that I was able to do as a prosecutor helps give us a little bit of credibility. At least that's what I hope.
What's your most memorable case that you ever prosecuted?
Oh, that's a good question. So that's a good question. There was a guy who cooperated. We arrested him on a small charge, and he said that he knew about a murder. And everybody says they know about a murder because they want a cooperation agreement. And so we were like, all right, whatever, bro. What can you tell us about it? And he said, after the shooting, we drove up to the Bronx, and we threw the 2 guns that we had used off this little bridge. And so it happened to be that the agent that I was working with, FBI agent, was on the FBI dive squad, which apparently they have. And so we got a takeout order from the judge, and I wasn't there, but they drove this guy up there, and they gave him like a brick, and they broke it up so it was about the weight of a gun. And they said to him, all right, show us how you threw it in. And so he did. And the dive squad went in, and the murder, it was a cold case. The murder had been several years prior. And within like about 6 feet of where he had thrown the bricks, they found 2 firearms. And so we were able to indict the guys the three guys that were part of the crew besides the cooperator, and bring justice. The man who had been killed was a 16-year-old kid who was selling drugs at the time, but had a tough life. And so that's a case that you would have never, got to bring. And I remember the testimony coming in about, and by the way, the cooperator didn't know we found the guns. We never told him. So we just asked him, what happened? Well, the FBI took me. What'd you do? I had a brick. I threw the brick in the water. Do you know what happened? No, I have no idea what happened. And so then to call the FBI agent to the stand and have him explain how they went in and found the guns, which was, great corroboration for what the witness had said. That was a great case. But listen, every case is amazing for its own reasons, and that's why being a prosecutor is great. Whether it's, like a one-day trial of a drug dealer or a much more complicated. I did mostly gangs work when I was an adult prosecutor. And every case was great. Like being able to prove robberies, murders, is something that is very hard to do. You forget that to convince 12 people that somebody did something is not easy, whether it's a simple charge or a complex charge. And so prosecutors that are out there doing justice every day, it's a hard job. It's hard to do that. And so you have to respect those men and women that are out there doing it. But as you can tell, I love being a prosecutor.
Let's fast forward to about this time last year. And President Trump names you as his nominee to be the Deputy Attorney General. You went through that process, the confirmation process, and here you are today. What was your number one priority, or what are some of your top priorities coming into the position to serve as Deputy Attorney General in light of all of that experience?
Yes, it was almost. I was actually nominated the day of the Scalia dinner last year. And I was coming to the event with Emil Bovee, who was also nominated that same day, and that was a great day. So our priorities were huge for the first 4 to 6 months. There was a lot of things that we felt like we had to either undo or adjust the way that things have been done for the past several years in all kinds of different areas. So in the immigration space, shut down the borders, and I think even the most optimistic among us didn't think that we would be able to have the success that we had as quickly as we had. But that was the big priority on January 20th. And then beyond that, just making our streets safe again, which again is a cliche, and make America safe again is something that we hear, but it's a big deal. I mean, it matters. Like having folks be able to walk around at night, feeling like the justice system is going to do what we are supposed to do when there's crimes committed is something that maybe we had taken for granted. That was a massive priority. The Homeland Security Task Force concept, which is to bring all federal law enforcement, not just DOJ, but all the components, state and local, the military, together, and then just focus on defending the homeland and making making it right when it comes to violent crime and narcotics trafficking was a huge priority. And then on the civil side, there were consent decrees. There were investigations that had been happening for years into areas that either we didn't belong or that if we did belong there, we didn't belong in the way that we were doing it in our administration's view. And so just working hard to kind of undo some of that was a big priority, for the first 4 to 5 months of what we did. And it's still going on. A lot of what we're doing every day is exactly what I'm just talking about now. Homeland Security Task Force, defending the homeland, but then all of our on the civil side, and the civil rights side, and the ENRD side, just really working hard to adjust cases that either had been, that we were defending or prosecuting, or that were near conclusion, to set them consistent with this administration.
I don't know, Todd, if the audience understands necessarily the kind of the concept of these Homeland Security task forces that you're just touting. So based on your experience as a prosecutor, how helpful do you think that concept has been from the president in terms of transforming the day-to-day law enforcement operations across this country to make the streets more secure, as you were just talking about?
Yes. I mean, it's really incredible, and we have tried to get the message out to the American people, but it's because it is so incredible. What we've done for the first time in modern history is we're combining every facet of law enforcement under one roof, and we're doing that because we want to be able to target a problem and fix it. So, a couple of easy examples: FBI traditionally doesn't do Title VIII work, so that's immigration work. So if there's an immigration case, FBI doesn't do it. DA doesn't do it. DA does Title 21 work, drug work. ATF focuses on violent crime and firearms trafficking. And so there are these silos that exist for good reason, potentially, in the right circumstances. And we just knocked those all down and said, okay, we are going to focus on particular areas for particular periods of time, and we're going to use all the resources we have. And what that means for a prosecutor is you might write a search warrant to go and get somebody who's here illegally, get in and get them, and normally you would prosecute that person. But we're not necessarily prosecuting them now. We're just deporting them. And so that's a new way to think if you're a prosecutor, because you're helping using judicial process to find people who have committed crimes, but then not necessarily going all the way through with prosecution and jail, but you're making a decision to just deport them. So if there's it's not just illegal immigration. 20 drug dealers who are all here illegally. Traditionally, an AUSA would go and indict 20 people. 20 people show up in court, and you prosecute them all. They all go to prison, and then they get deported 5 to 30 years later, depending on their sentence. And that's a form of justice that is extraordinarily important. But we're rethinking that a little bit. And is it better to only focus on 10 instead of 20? The 10 leaders, the ones who also have violence, the ones who are repeat offenders? And is it better to just deport the other 10? And you might say, well, that's stupid, Todd, because they're just going to come back in. But they're not, because our borders are secure. So it's an efficiency model that HSTF and this administration are working hard, and we're not always getting it right. It's not perfection, but it makes the Department of Justice a lot more nimble and able to actually focus on different areas that I think are working and making us all safe again. And then we're doing things like focusing on DC, focusing on Memphis, and saying, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to use all of the resources of the federal government to go and arrest anybody who's committed crimes, anybody who has warrants, and we've taken 500 guns off the streets in this city since August 4th. And that's, you throw out numbers, but like if you put 500 guns up here, those are guns, every single one of those were illegally possessed by someone who wasn't allowed to have them, right? So a felon or someone who's here illegally. And so that is making everybody in this room safer today. And that's not something that's been done in the past. And the same thing's happening in Memphis with very similar results. And when you appeal to, and the president talks about this a lot, there's nobody in this city, at least if they're being honest, that's frustrated that we're arresting bad guys. Neighbors, the people that are trying to go and enjoy their time in local parks and they're raising their families in the city, low-income folks, people who work on the Hill, people who work in the government, people who work at law firms. It's a good thing to do. And it's easy for the media and it's easy for the folks that just hate this administration to be critical of that. But conceptually, if you were told, hey, we have a great idea, your community has a lot of crime, we're going to drop everything, we're going to go in and we're going to clean it up. Who among us is going to be like, well, I think that's a bad idea? And so that's what we're doing, and it is working. Even, the leadership in this city, I don't think a single one of them voted for President Trump. But a lot of them, I would even say most of them, are very supportive of what we're doing because they're seeing the results. And also, we're helping, we're painting we're cleaning up the sidewalks, we're paving the roads, and that's not something that the United States Department of Justice is usually part of, but we are now.
Let's shift gears just a little bit now, away from the Homeland Security Task Forces. And you spoke earlier, kind of in your opening remarks, a little bit about the department's current focus on the enforcement of civil rights laws for all Americans. What do you think has been most transformational in that area, and where are you guys spending your time today?
It's a great question. The civil rights, and Harmeet Dillon's our AAG of civil rights. She's a rock star. She's terrific. The civil rights laws that we can all Google and read them, they have been misapplied for a very long time. And if we're going to be honest with each other for a minute, there have been times over the past 20 years when Republicans when our party haven't used those tools in a way that we should. And so what we're doing is we're using our civil rights laws to actually enforce the civil rights of all Americans. And that comes in many different forms. It comes in the forms of anti-Semitism on college campuses. It comes in the form of not just individualized, you're violating someone's civil rights, but institutions that are violating civil rights of Americans, we're now going after and holding them accountable. And so it's the same. We didn't rewrite the laws. It's the same laws that existed for a long time now. They're just being applied in what we believe is the right way and a fair way, and it's working. So you read in the papers and you read online, universities and organizations that are, because of this administration, changing their policies and changing the way that they've been, their conduct over the past 5-10 years. And it's the right thing to do. Like, we are not wrong, right? The fact that voices, that not only conservative voices on campus were not just quieted down, there was an attempt to extinguish them for a long time. And nobody cared. I mean, people in this room cared. But the mainstream media, the Department of Justice, administrations didn't even bat an eye at that. And again, we are right. We are not wrong in going to a university and saying, the story we heard last night about NYU, it had a great ending because we have a warrior that stood up. But it's a horrible story that still happens. And so, when our civil rights unit now, in past administrations, Republican administrations, you've shut it down. We've cut lawyers and said, we're not going to do it. We're going to ignore civil rights. And many civil rights attorneys at the Department of Justice just hunkered down for 4 years and waited it out. And we're not doing that. We're empowering the lawyers, or we're hiring new lawyers and telling them, let's go out, let's enforce the civil rights laws, let's make sure that it includes voting rights and going after states that are not complying with the laws. And so it's an assault right now in a good way on a lot of places that have been doing the wrong thing for a long time.
Now, maybe I'm an outlier here. I think maybe we're aligned in this position, but does the department view the Second Amendment as a civil right for Americans, and what is happening in that space?
I mean, we have a Second Amendment unit in the civil right for the first time ever, standing up, but for the shutdown, this little thing, but standing up in the civil rights. Yeah, you can clap. It's a great thing. It's a great thing. The funny thing, and by funny, it's not funny at all, about the Second Amendment and the rights that we have as Americans when it comes to firearms, is that it's not complicated. And we've made it complicated with regulation and with state efforts in many blue states to complicate it, but it shouldn't be. So we're doing things like 925C, where you can get your rights back to own firearms. That's been on the books for a long time. Nobody did anything about it. And so we're building that up, and that's going to be live in early next year, where individuals can go and get their rights back. There's tons of regulations that made impossible for FFLs to actually run a business. And the last administration would shut companies and shut stores down for the most minor of violations, when really the procedures that we have to make sure that the individuals selling firearms are selling them to the right people are designed for those gun shop owners to help us, to help law enforcement when there's bad actors. And that's not what it's been doing. And so that is a fundamental civil right that every American has, as much as any other right. And it's not an easy fix. It isn't, because it's ingrained in some ways, but we have our ATF, we're rolling back so many regulations, and this is true, that the General Counsel of ATF came to me and said, can we figure out a way to kind of not have such a bottleneck? Because when you change a regulation, there's all kinds of folks that have to bless it and sign off on it. And there's so many regulations that ATF had in place that are absurd. And so we've created a way to do it where we're doing the right thing and for the right reasons, but we removed a lot of the bureaucracy, and it's one of the I think one of the most important things we can do in the first year of our administration, because it's going to take several years to actually play out. So, yeah, man, we're doing a lot in that space, and it's not slowing down.
Donald Trump issued an executive order early in his administration that promised to end the weaponization of government. I think all of us consume media. We see what happens in the news. We see what people are saying on social media, on mainstream news outlets, all kinds of things. There's a lot of criticism of the department today, saying that the department is, in fact, engaged in weaponization of government against its opponents. I'd like to give you an opportunity to kind of address that issue, just generally speaking, to point out what the department is, in fact, doing, and how you'd respond to those critics.
So, yes, thank you. It is something that is incredibly important to President Trump and important to Attorney General Bondi and certainly important to me as well. What happened the past 4 years within the United States Department of Justice, I'm going to say it's a Latin term, batshit crazy. And I say that, I did have the privilege and honor of representing President Trump in the Manhattan trial with DA Bragg, but I also represented him in the Florida documents case and the cases brought by Jack Smith. And what we saw, nearly every member of President Trump's last administration, some of whom are in this room, had to go in front of a grand jury over one reason or another. His Secret Service detail had to go in front of a grand jury, some of them twice. You have a situation where there was such a weaponization against not only one man and not only one man's family, but against an entire administration. You had bars around this country looking to strip people of their licenses for work that they did in government. You had an administration that was going after mothers, going after churches, going after school boards. And that's not hypothetical. That's not some far-ex idea. That's actually what happened. You had, in the white-collar space, you had investigations against companies that were costing millions and millions of dollars without identifying a crime. You had entire units at the Department of Justice going after industries, literally regulation by prosecution. So I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong, and if you tempt me, I'm going to throw you in prison. And so when I read now that we're weaponizing I feel like I'm being gaslit. Because we're doing exactly the opposite. I mean, we're investigating cases, and we rolled back a lot of prosecutions and investigations that were being done for absolutely the wrong reasons. But our prosecutions are way up because we're prosecuting the right people for the right reasons. And so it's pretty telling that even today, even after what we saw happen with President Trump, and even after he won a year ago, and everything that we saw happen with that case and with the special counsel and in New York, that when we come in and say, no, we're not doing that. There's no political prosecution. We don't have the public integrity unit anymore, and there's a lot of criticism about that. We didn't just want to get rid of a unit. We took a look at what had been done out of that unit for many, many years, and the true damage to our political process that had happened out of that unit. Does that mean that everybody in that unit were bad? I mean, of course not. That's not what it means at all. But does it mean that there was a mistakes and irreversible conduct for years and years and years that had to be fixed? Yes, that's exactly what it means. And so this DOJ is not weaponized in any way, shape, or form. It's absolutely not. The last DOJ, I don't even, like I say it as if I have to justify myself, and I have a couple different lines because, when I was representing the president, there was like they didn't indict him once or twice or 3 times or even 4 times, 5 times. There's 5 indictments filed against President Trump. It wasn't enough. They brought a civil suit against him to not only destroy him, but his company and his kids. They went after his daughter. It took 3 years for the judge to kick it out. She had nothing to do with the company. Individuals who worked or even associated with President Trump couldn't get jobs. And I'm sure that's true of some people in this room. You have states that weaponized their state AG system and indicted people for crazy reasons. Most of those cases are totally gone. But yeah, I'm weaponizing the DOJ. Okay. So, look, I hope that time heals wounds, and I hope that we move forward as a country, and we will, to back to where the Department of Justice is doing justice, and I think we're doing that now. But I take umbrage at the idea that the work that our prosecutors are doing is weaponization, because I have receipts. I know what happened the past couple of years. I lived it, and I know that I'm in the same offices. I'm in the same building, and we are running this department in a much different way. Sorry, that was a little speechy. Sorry about that.
It was great. So speaking of criticism from the media on another issue that the department frequently gets, when it comes to immigration enforcement, something that you've highlighted repeatedly in your remarks today, whether it's in the context of Homeland Security task forces, whether it's in the context of just prosecuting offenses, stopping human trafficking. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you perceive the department's shift in that space over the last 10 months? and kind of how you respond to criticism that that the Department of Justice is engaging in hateful or anti-immigrant behavior or any of these other kind of critiques that you hear across the media today?
So, yes. So it is an interesting phenomenon, the way that the media and certain parts of this country are treating ICE officers and federal officials who are literally just enforcing the law, the laws that have been on the books for a very long time. And it's funny, when you look at the reasons why President Trump won last year, our border disaster was one of the main reasons, which means people in America were tired of it. They didn't think it was the right way to be. And by the way, it is against the law. And everybody thinks that. I don't want to misquote, but do people know who Stephen Miller is? Gene, do you know him?
There's a rumor.
I love Stephen, I do. And Stephen has very strong views on immigration. They're very strong, correct views on immigration. If they've committed a crime, deport them, no questions asked. They're gone. We have to send a clear message. Just because your child gets across the border, that doesn't mean your child gets to stay. Does that sound like Stephen Miller? Raise your hand. Okay, stop. That was Hillary Clinton. All right? If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up. Even as we are a nation of immigrants, we are also a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our immigration laws and must go. Sound like Stephen Miller? No, Barack Obama. Okay? I mean, I don't want to hijack this thing, but it is insane. Joe Biden talking about how he voted for building a wall and how important it was to make sure only people who are allowed in this country are allowed in. Okay, that's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens. That's not Donald J. Trump, that's Bill Clinton. So and yet Stephen Miller can't go out at night without being tormented. People threaten the lives of our ICE officers for doing their jobs. Governors mock us. Local DAs threaten to arrest federal agents doing their job. And so when I think about the Department of Justice and our mission today, and what our mission has to be for the foreseeable future, it's just correcting that narrative. Because when we're pushing people out, when we're deporting people, they are people who are here illegally. That is a crime. I didn't make the laws. And so it is a priority of President Trump. It's a priority of General Bondi. It's a priority of mine and Noam and all the folks that are working hard every day. But and that's fine. It's also disgusting what leadership in this country has done because of their sudden, and I mean sudden because I'm not making that up. You can Google it later. Sudden change of position on what we should be doing about the millions of illegal aliens in this country.
One of the areas in which illegal immigration seems to play out a lot, where you get even more criticism on a regular basis, comes from Article 3. Let's talk a little bit more about your perceptions, how you in the department are dealing with hostile district courts, district court injunctions, and how you are trying to help the government do its job in light of this seemingly unceasing just series of injunctions and restraining orders, and how successful has the department been at fighting back?
Yeah, I mean, everybody in this room, I mean, the reason why this organization focuses so much energy and effort and time on getting the right people to the bench is because it is one of the most important, if not the most important thing an Article 2 administration can do, which is make sure your Article 3s are the right people and are going to follow the Constitution and the laws. And the best evidence of that is what we see playing out around this country over the past 8 months. We've lost, I think, once in front of the Supreme Court. Maybe twice on another small issue. And there have been multiple times when a local district judge, after having been either have had something stayed or actually reversed by the appellate court or the Supreme Court, continues to defy it. And we've had to go back up to the Supreme Court for the Supreme Court to tell the district court judge to follow their orders. And does the media say that the judges are defiant or that the Department of Justice and President Trump is? It's always us. And we're not. We do follow court orders. And when we lose, and we lose at district courts all the time, we have judges literally telling the president, the executive, what he can and cannot do, what his officers can and cannot do, micromanaging Article 2. And our civil lawyers are just phenomenal. I mean, they are the best, smartest lawyers, and they are every day. They're bouncing around this country fighting these activist judges that they have a robe on, but they are more political, or certainly as political, as the most liberal governor or DA. And you can't forget that. You can't forget that. A judge doesn't get a special place simply because a robe is put on them. They still have to follow the law and the Constitution. And we have seen judges just defy that. Even in liberal appellate courts, where we have judges that are much more stronger on one side of the aisle than the other, we are routinely getting stays and getting reversals because of local judges just not following the law full stop. And it's the same judges, or not the same judges, but there's a group of judges that are repeat players, and that's obviously not by happenstance. That's intentional, and it's a war, man. And I sit in my office, and we were told we lost today. We had an injunction, and we're going to appeal. And then my guys, the men and women that work at the department, stay up all night, get an appeal in. Stayed, go back to the district court judge. Judge still wants to just do whatever he or she wants to do. Judge, you know what, we'll just go back up and get another stay. And that's what we do. And it's happening over and over and over again. We had a judge yesterday that, order law enforcement to conduct themselves in a particular way. Not consistent with the Constitution, but in the way this judge thinks they need to act. And it's something that we struggle with, because everybody in this room, if there's any organization in the world that this will resonate with, having a judge that follows the Constitution is a very basic tenet of justice in this country. And the system is not set up for efficiency when it comes to rogue activist judges. So we lose days, we lose weeks, months sometimes because of this. And that's why activist groups do what they do. And so, if there's young lawyers out there that want to have a great time going to court, you're going to lose a lot. But going to court and just fighting, you should come work at the Department of Justice. And we need you. We need you. I was at the dinner last night, and I looked around, and I said to myself, man, there has got to be a couple dozen young lawyers who are thirsty and hungry and ready to work, because we need you, because it is a war, and it is something that we will not win unless we keep on fighting. And it's a cliche, because there's a lot of battles that we do lose, but at the end of the day, we are not wrong. And I've said that a couple times, and it's true, and it's evidenced by the results we're seeing at the Supreme Court and at the courts of appeals. But but it's hard to get the media, it's hard to get the American people to focus on how, what a travesty it is when you have an individual judge be able to stop an entire operation or an entire administrative policy that's constitutional and allowed, just because he or she chooses to do so. So it's a war.
I've noticed, I think this room in particular has probably noticed, that there are a number of your attorneys who work in the department who are now on the receiving end of bar complaints based solely on the work that they're doing. How is the department responding to that? And how does that strike you as someone who spent your time, your early formative years of your legal career, being a prosecutor, just trying to enforce the laws of the United States?
No, it happened in the last administration. It's happening again, and the D.C. bar in particular is one of the most activist, obnoxious bars when it comes to going after conservative lawyers. It's out of this world what they do. I mean, there was an opinion issued, right? A bar issuing opinions on things they should have nothing to do with, suggesting law firms might need to get conflict waivers with deals settlements that they had with the administration. Just out of the blue. You know, that we have multiple lawyers that are fighting bar complaints for privileged communications they had internally at the Department of Justice that somebody then leaks. Normally it's the New York Times. And we're fighting these bar complaints. So I'm going to tell you what we're doing, and it's not in full effect yet. But what we're going to do is we're going to handle any complaints in-house. So we're changing the regulation so that if there's a complaint against one of our trial attorneys or our AUSAs, we will look at it with our ethics department. The bar doesn't get a look at it. And at the end of that process, if we determine that there's discipline that's necessary, if we determine that it should be referred to the bar, we're going to do that. But we're going to do everything we can to take these activist bars, and DC is right at the top, is at the top, out of the picture. I mean, it is, a DOJ lawyer has a privileged communication with a supervisor or with another lawyer, drafts a memo. The memo doesn't go anywhere. It just goes internally. Somebody explain to me how that conduct could be the subject of a DC bar investigation. Crickets, because there's no way you can explain that. I mean, and so that's what we saw happening, and it's just another way that there's a liberal side that doesn't like what we're doing, and they don't like the success that we're having, the changes that we're making, and the good things that are happening. And so they're doing everything they can to stop us, and that's one thing they're doing. Look, we give our lawyers best lawyers around. If they want to go outside and hire outside counsel, we're paying for it. And we're encouraging them to fight as hard as they can, and backing them up, and it's working.
I know we're running shorter on time, but let's focus a little bit and already reflect on your time in the department. What is something that you are most proud of accomplishing so far in your time as Deputy Attorney General?
I mean, I love my job, and I love going to work every day and working with General Bondi and the crew that works with me. And the reason why is because we are doing really good work. The work the department has done since January 20th is the likes of which I don't think any administration has ever been able to accomplish. I mean, just things like we could take it in buckets very quickly. The drug war. We've had 60 narco-terrorist cartel leaders just dropped in our country to be prosecuted, not extradited, But we've worked out a deal with Mexico where they've literally just dropped them off. And so you have 60, which is more than were extradited over 4 years combined, facing justice in the United States. We have 10 times the number of drug prosecutions across the board for serious drug crimes than over the past several years. And so that's just the drug area. In the civil space, we talked about it a little bit, but we have undone, I think, 7 consent decrees, shut down over a dozen investigations into, and these, you can say, well, maybe the consent decree should have been in place. False. No, these were insane, onerous consent decrees on law enforcement, on some schools that were just done as a way to punish folks for doing their jobs. And that's something that when I talk to Harmeet, when I talk to our team, to the Attorney General, and we talk about that being done, it's something that is life-changing for communities around. I think the work that we're doing and that we've done to change the narrative in the white-collar space is extraordinarily important. I don't know if there's any FCPA lawyers in this room, and if so, I'm sorry, because you should probably out of work. But we were investigating American companies for years and years and years, to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. And then the reward for a 4 or 5 year investigation was some sort of deferred prosecution or non-prosecution agreement where you would have a monitor imposed that would last anywhere from 2 to 5 years, so you give another $1 or $2 million a month to them. And it was just crippling American companies and American businesses. It's not to say that bribery will ever be legal or appropriate, but the way that we were investigating and prosecuting was not making America first in any way, shape, or form. It was hurting American companies. And so dialing that back and focusing on the right cases is something that is extraordinary. What we're doing in the crypto space is also something that is opening up jobs. I mean, the whole point of this great country, the whole point of President Trump winning is so that we could have prosperity, so that we could take America back. And the Department of Justice is not the only part of this administration that can do that, but we can certainly do our part. So I think that we take criticism, and I don't mind criticism. But the work that is actually happening, that our prosecutors are doing around the country, is so great. And every time I meet with the U.S. attorney and go to a U.S. attorney's office, their indictment numbers are up, their arrest numbers are up. They're putting more people in jail for the right reasons. They're shutting down investigations that should be shut down. And so you folks in this room that are wondering how things are going great. They really are. They're going great. Not as the Librarian of Congress. They won't even let me in. I got enjoined, unenjoined, and then enjoined again. So, whatever.
There's hope for us all. One final question before we go. To the younger lawyers and to the law students who are in the room today, what is one piece of advice that you would offer to them as they look and survey their career options, as they survey the lawyer's role in society today? What is one piece of advice that you would leave them with?
I think there's few things more important than your conviction. And you can turn that conviction into whatever you want. Hopefully it's public service, and hopefully it's at the Department of Justice. But do something with your conviction. If you're at a law firm and you're working your butt off every day, or you're going to go to a law firm, make sure you carve out time to work on cases that are important to you and important to other folks in this room. And if you want, I'm not joking when I tell you, if you're a young lawyer or you're going to graduate a year, you should think very hard about working in this administration. We need prosecutors, we need civil lawyers, we need lawyers that are committed to justice and to doing the right thing. And there was a long time when you had to hide if you were somebody who really wanted to put bad guys in jail. There was a long time when you almost had to have guilt if you were a lawyer and you just wanted to really go out and do justice, you wanted to defend the rights of individuals who were being persecuted. That time is at least as long as I'm the Deputy Attorney General, that time is long, long gone. And so the Attorney General and I say all the time, we need good people. And so if you're a young lawyer out there, give me a call.
Well, Mr. Deputy Attorney General, I think I speak for everyone in the room today when we say thank you for your time, thank you for your attention, thank you for your leadership, thank you for sharing your views on all of these critical issues, on the work that you and the men and women at the Department of Justice are doing. We hope that some of the young folks do, in fact, call you and pursue a career at the department in defending this great nation. So please join me in welcoming thanking the Deputy Attorney General.
Thank you.